What if I told you there was one tool that could diagnose everything from worn rings, a blown head gasket, and leaking valves, and best of all, it only costs about $30 to make? It's called a leak down tester, and it allows you to add a metered amount of air into the cylinder, testing the condition of all the components required for effective combustion. And based off of where the air is escaping, allows you to identify what's not sealing correctly, and how much is escaping is conveniently quantified as a percentage. This therefore gives you a good understanding of the health and condition of your engine without having to remove a single nut or bolt. As you can see, this tool becomes a huge time saver and takes away all the guesswork finding that fault that you have. And it's likely you've already got some of the things you need to make the tester, but I've still put links in the description below for you. And because when I made mine I already had some parts on hand, it ended up being a little bit more complicated than what it needed to be. But if you do use the links below, you'll end up with a simplified, more compact tool with less parts. So firstly, we need a quick connect. Now, there are a few different types and styles, so just make sure the one you order matches up with what you've already got on your air tools. We need a regulator and a gauge, a male-to-male fitting, a threaded T connector, a regulator, a female quick connect, and again, just make sure it's compatible with the adapters you're already using, a 40 thou or 1mm drill bit, a small amount of epoxy, some thread sealant of your choice, and lastly, to connect that tool to the engine, I simply used the hose that came with my compression tester. But note, for a leak down test, you have to remove the Schrader valve in the end. You can either use the core tool or simply a pair of needle nose pliers. And again, I've put links in the description below if you haven't got one, but just note that it's an M14 by 1.25. It's the most common size of spark plug thread, but not the only one. So again, just match it up to the engine that you have. So firstly, we fill that male-to-male adapter with epoxy. We let it cure for about 24 hours. And then drill all the way through from one end to another. The air fitting goes onto the input side of the gauge. And the adapter we filled with epoxy goes onto the output side of that gauge. We then connect the T joint onto that adapter. The gauge then joins onto the top of the T. Lastly, we screw on that quick disconnect onto that third part of the T, and you're done. Now, before we put this tool to use, if you enjoy my content, please consider hitting that subscribe button, giving the video a thumbs up, and leaving a comment in the comments section below. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps the channel out. Setting up the tool for use is really easy. Simply pull the regulator knob down, turn it all the way anti-clockwise until it stops, and then connect your air hose. Now we need to set the engine to just past top dead center on the compression stroke, and this ensures that both valves are fully seated and not being held open by any automatic compression release. And it might be difficult to see those valves and piston moving up and down through that spark plug hole. Therefore, you can thread your hose into the spark plug hole, place a latex glove on the end of it, seal it with your fingers, gently rotate that engine round, and as soon as that glove just starts to deflate, you know you're exactly in the right position. Now slowly turn the regulator on your tester clockwise until the needle on the first gauge aligns with 50 psi. 50 psi is my preference for two reasons. Firstly, it makes the maths very easy, and secondly, it doesn't push that much air into the engine, which can cause it to spin violently. Now we need to check the set point of our gauges, and to do so we simply connect the compression test hose. The needle on the second of the two gauges should drop down towards 0, disconnect that hose, and the needle of the second gauge should return back to 50. If it doesn't, adjust the regulator and repeat this process as many times as it takes until it does. And now that it's all set up correctly, we can thread that hose into the spark plug hole. And just before we add air into the cylinder, I recommend that you fix that crankshaft in place. You can use a breaker bar on the crankshaft nut if it's accessible. You can clamp some vice grips directly onto the crankshaft with a small amount of padding so you don't damage it. Or you can place a piece of wood under the mower deck against the blade to stop it spinning. Now we connect our hose to the tester and then take note of how many PSI the needle on the second gauge has dropped from 50. And in this case for me, it's dropped about 12 PSI. We double this number and that will then give us our leak down percentage. So in this case, our Briggs Stratton engine that I've got here has a 24% leak down. Now to quantify these numbers, less than 5% is considered a race spec engine. A very healthy, good condition engine will show between 5 and 15%. An engine in poor condition will show 15 to 20%, and an engine in very bad condition will be 20% or more. So now that our tool has shown us that we do have a major leak somewhere, we can now use it to find out where that is. I have a little trick that I use, which is a lit incense. And this gives me a visual reference of where the air is coming from, as well as allows you to get to any of those tight or hard to reach areas. So firstly, I'll test around that carburetor intake area, and this will give me an indication as to whether the intake valve is leaking. And it's holding fine, there's no issue there. The muffler next. And again, it doesn't seem to be leaking, so I know that the exhaust valve is sealing effectively. Now I can move around the cylinder head to show if we've got a blown head gasket or whether the mating surfaces have warped. And there's nothing there either, so we can move on to the spark plug area just to see if there's any leak past the threads. And again, that's holding just fine. Now, because this is an air-cooled engine, we don't have a radiator cap to test, but if yours does, you can pop that off and have a quick look there as well. So that just leaves us one more place to check, and that's the dipstick or the PCV valve. And there it is. So this tells us that either we have worn or damaged rings, a worn or damaged cylinder bore, or the gasket in overhead valve engines between that cylinder and the push rod area has been damaged. So in summary, in just a few seconds, we've learned that we have a major leak. It's 24%. It's passing between the rings and the cylinder, and that everything else is sealing very well. So what we can do now, I've actually got this incredibly small bore scope, and again, there are links in the description below if you want to get one, and we'll see if there's any damage or anything obvious on the cylinder walls. It appears to be in excellent condition. In fact, apart from some very minor marks, it's still got the factory crosshatch. So I reckon with just a light hone, a new set of rings, we'll be able to get this engine back up and running reliably. So you may be asking yourself, why not just do a compression test? Well, unless stated by the manufacturer in the manual, I recommend you never use a compression tester on a 4-stroke engine. Firstly, they all have some form of compression release, so you're never going to get an accurate representation as to how effective and well the engine is sealing at operating conditions. And also, unlike the leak down test, it won't actually tell you where that low reading is coming from. So therefore, my recommendation is if you're working on 4-stroke engines, I recommend you use a leak down tester. And if you're working on a 2-stroke engine, you only ever use a compression tester. Now, going back to that bore scope that I used earlier to look inside the cylinder, it's got some incredible features. From that tiny 3.9mm or 5/32 of an inch camera that still films in full HD and articulates 210 degrees in each direction. It's amazing just how effective that combination is, and no one sent me this to review. I paid full retail price for it. And once again, I've put links in the description below, and I've also done a video review on the tool up here for you next.